Look, you got the money, I got the box. What else is there to talk about?
I'll give you another 1,000 credits to tell me how you got it.
Another 1,000.
Done. How?
You just walk in like you belong.
Takes more than that, doesn't it?
What, to steal from the Empire? What do you need? A uniform, some dirty hands, and an Imperial toolkit. They're so proud of themselves, they don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied, they can't imagine it.
Can't imagine what.
That someone like me would ever get inside their house, walk their floors, spit in their food, take their gear.
The arrogance is remarkable, isn't it?
Greetings, Bucketheads! Mayvar Tigar. Welcome to the 174th Andor enjoying episode of Mandovision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. How the heck are you doing today? It is Wednesday, September 21st. It is Andor Day. The first 3 episodes are now available for streaming, and we have watched and enjoyed. So we're here to discuss those said 3 episodes, and, you know, doing 3 episodes at one time is not how we normally operate on this podcast, but we're going to give it a try. So it's a little bit of more of a free-form conversation as opposed to breaking down each individual episode, because you know how long I take to do 1 episode of a show, let alone 3. So it's going to be a little bit more open, a little bit more free-flow, organic in the conversation. But we're going to talk about a lot of the fun things going on in the show, the mysteries of Andor's past, the mysteries of what's going on now in the storyline, and sort of talking about where we are in the Star Wars galaxy at this moment that the show is taking place. I'm really fascinated by a lot of the things that we saw on the screen, and I'm really excited to spend time in this period. You know, if you're listening to the show, you know how fond I am for this time that Ben Kenobi fondly referred to as the Dark Times, and getting to kind of explore this era before the rebellion really takes root in the galaxy. So getting to explore this is going to be a lot of fun, at least for me. And listen, I'm going to tell you right now my immediate impression of this show is you know, The Mandalorian is the Star Wars show I always wanted, but Andor might be the Star Wars show I never knew I needed. And these 3 episodes are a really strong indication that I am going to like this. This is scratching a certain Star Wars itch that a lot of the newer content doesn't quite get to, and we'll talk about that. I'll elaborate on my feelings, and maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, and that's okay. Doesn't matter. We're gonna check it out. We're gonna explore it. We're gonna talk about it all coming up. But let's kind of get some of the particulars out of the way, because you know how much I like to give credit to the creatives involved in the show. Obviously, this series, written by Tony Gilroy, he's the one who helped develop it, bring it to life. In case you don't know, Tony Gilroy stepped on board with Rogue One and helped do a lot of the rewrites and the reshoots that really helped, in my opinion, make that movie into a home run, just a slam dunk banger of a Star Wars picture. So having Gilroy come on board to do this Andor series he's talked about it a lot in the press recently, leading into the debut of the shows, about how, he's not necessarily a Star Wars guy, but he understood the characters. And that was what sort of drove him and motivated him to be on this series. And he's come out and talked a lot about, maybe from his opinion, that maybe having Star Wars fans making Star Wars movies and shows isn't necessarily the best course of action as far as for dramatic purposes. That having what he sort of made, like he was sort of, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he made it sound like his detachment from Star Wars allows him to focus on character and story, and sometimes as a fan you can get blinded by sort of your desire to do certain things and to in your perceptions of what Star Wars is, and then maybe you sacrifice character and plot and story and things like that. It's a very interesting comment. Tony Gilroy is a very interesting, thoughtful man, and we can explore his kind of comments and thoughts on these things a little bit later. But I do think his not being a Star Wars fan lends to a very unique perspective that we've not seen a lot of in the new Disney era of Star Wars. So I am really excited to explore this era. I have talked about how much I enjoy Tony Gilroy's work, particularly Michael Clayton. My goodness, what a film! And yeah, so I want to give credit to him and for bringing the show to life, because again, I didn't think I needed a Cassian Andor show, and now I kind of think I really, really needed a Cassian Andor show. And it's only 3 episodes in. Maybe I'll change my mind later. We'll see. The first 3 episodes were directed by Toby Haynes, and I think he did a real bang up job. And apparently, I think he's got something like he's directed like 6 episodes of the show, I think, for the season, and that's pretty cool. So you're gonna have a lot of visual consistency between the episodes, with so many directors staying on board for many of the episodes. So that's kind of cool, and I think they're gonna cover. I think it's going to stay kind of arc-based as far as like how the directors go and how that all works out. Our principal cast, the cast is huge so far, so I'm not gonna go too deep in the weeds on this. But obviously, Diego Luna is Cassian Andor, Stellan Skarsgård is Luthen Rael, Genevieve O'Reilly is Mon Mothma, and those are kind of our principal characters at this point in the show. I don't want to do any disservice to the rest of the cast because there's so many wonderful people in these first 3 episodes, but that's kind of, I just want to stay on the principles at the moment. We'll talk about individual performances as we need to. Do I want to say? I don't know if I want to say. Maybe I'll wait till we get to the other side of the bump. But yeah, there's good stuff in there. So let's go ahead and get into Andor talk. Are you ready? You know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Oh, they'd hang me, wouldn't they? Take me up Brick's Road and hang me in the square. Wouldn't be the first time, would it? Isn't that where they hung your father?
Who are you? What is this?
I said I know you. I know all about you. Yes, I want the box, and I'll leave with that if it's all I can get. I came looking for something more, and I think I found it. I'd like you to come with me.
How do you know about me?
I was hoping for a more relaxed conversation, but you're right, we don't have time. Contrary to what you told me, I doubt that you'll be sticking around. I know you killed 2 corpos at Molana 1. I know they're coming for you. Seems like such a waste to let them have you. Waste of talent.
Who are you?
That's the wrong question. The right question is, how much time do we have to get out of here?
Why would I go anywhere with you?
Don't you want to fight these bastards for real?
So the day is finally here. Andor has debuted, and I think it's safe to say that, based off of what we've seen in these first 3 episodes, this might be the most different Star Wars show we've gotten thus far in the Disney era, and I'm delighted by that. I am so beyond tickled by what I'm seeing on the show, visually, story-wise, structure-wise, and just sort of, but its tone is really kind of fascinating me as well, because I've said it before, if you're a longtime member of this listening audience, I've always wanted sort of a darker, I hesitate to use the word mature, but I wanted a Star Wars show that showed us sort of the underbelly of the Star Wars galaxy. Have us spend some time in the muck, in the dirt, kind kind of like where the boots are on the ground kind of story. And Andor seems to be giving us that right off the bat. I mean, we couldn't be more in the muck if we tried. It's a really wonderful perspective on the Star Wars galaxy, because it's the original trilogy always had like that sort of used look to it, and then we go to the prequels and everything's shiny and new, and we're definitely transitioning to that sort of dirty, grimy, used look of Star Wars in this show. So I think there's a lot of visual consistency as we sort of progress through the fall of the Republic to the rise of the Empire. And visually, too, what I like, especially when we're on the planet Ferrix, I like the sort of tactile feel of that world. It's brick and stone, and it just has like a real vibe to it. Like it almost feels alive in a sense. Like it's sort of repressed and smushed down, but it's real. It has a feel to it. Like it looks like someplace you could actually go. Yes, the trappings of Star Wars exist in it, but there's a visual style there that is like familiar. And I think that's a really key element to the show, to make you sort of connect to these characters in a way. You have to be able to understand them. And by putting it in a place that you can kind of see existing somewhere, I think that's something unique for a show so far. And I like that. I like that we also get to the chase, or to the point, really quickly. I mean, we start off with Cassian on another planet. He's Cassian at this point is very interesting to me. I sort of like that he's somewhat of a grifter, somewhat of a scammer. He's a thief. He is, a little rougher around the edges than when we saw him in Rogue One, as we're getting to know him. But he's sort of full of his raw potential, and that's what Luthen sees when they finally meet in the third episode. But he's not the agent that we gotten to know in Rogue One. Again, he's rough around the edges. He doesn't have all the skills needed to be a top spy, a top agent of espionage for a burgeoning rebellion. But the potential's there. You sort of see how he can develop into that from this role that he's taken on for himself. And he's off planet of his own planet in this corporate sector world. And he seems to be looking for links to his past. He claims he's looking for a sister. Is that really what's going on? We're not quite clear yet, because as we find out later in the episode, Andor is a Kenari, but he is taken from Kenari when he's very young, roughly, I don't know. We know he said he's been in this fight since he was 6 years old, but he appears to be much older than that when we meet up with him on his planet, where he's on Kenari, where he's living a very sort of Lord of the Flies kind of lifestyle. He's there with a bunch of other kids. There's no adults around. We find out later on there's been some sort of mining accident, and the Republic has abandoned Kenari, and that's an important element to this too. He's on Kenari when it's still the Clone Wars, it's still the Republic in place as the galactic power. And we see a Separatist presence, a Separatist ship crashing onto the planet. And we have to wonder, what's that Separatist ship all about? And do those people on board, we can't quite call them soldiers, but I sort of believe them to be scientists. Do they die? They get like this sort of the yellowy, jaundicey looking thing going on. Are they developing a bioweapon to use against the Republic? That's a very good possibility. Or did they just die of some kind of weird off-gassing from their crash ship? I'm going bioweapon. I think there's more to that story than we're getting so far, and we'll probably continue to track that progress as we sort of flash back to Andor in the current time, which is 5 years before the Battle of Yavin. And then, young Cassian, now just removed from Kenari, rescued by Marva Andor and her partner, who seem to be into salvage, and the droid B2 Emo. Hey now, I love that droid. I'm a big fan of that droid already. Looks like he's sort of reminiscent of an astromech, but he's kind of got like a different whole thing going on. It's very helpful. He can speak. That's a lot of fun too. I'm enjoying that aspect of the show. But yeah, we get to the crux of things really quickly in this first episode. Andor investigating, looking for possible links to his past. Ends up killing these corpo security guys who are trying to shake him down. And, it's one of those situations that Andor, I don't think, meant to kill anybody. It escalated, and then he's like, you know what? Well, I got to kill this guy now, too. And he knows he's in trouble. So he goes back to Phoenix. And and he has to get off planet. He knows he has to get away because the corpos are coming for him. Though I think he thinks he has more time. But there's a whole, what's the word I want to go with? There's a whole community of people that Andor has rubbed the wrong way. Cassian has again, as sort of this griftery character, he's borrowed money, he's schemed people, he's got a lot of fingers in many, many different pies. And so he has a lot of friends, but he's got a few people he's kind of chaffed a little bit too, including this one fella who seems to take his relationship with his friend very, very seriously and rats him out eventually. And, again, it's all sort of simple storytelling stuff, but you understand everybody's actions. You don't agree with them, but you sort of understand them. Even the corporate security guys, you understand where that guy's coming from, even though it's misguided. Because let's talk about the corporate security element of this. I sort of dig that we're not even on the Empire's radar just yet. We're on a world that's known for scavenging, that's doing salvage work, and it's anything that goes on there is sort of beneath the Empire's notice. But they have this corporate security in place to kind of keep things in check. And I think one of the corporate security guys at one point refers to themselves as the tip of the knife for the Empire. And talk about like an overinflated sense of self-importance when that's sort of like your perspective on how you are. It's sort of an interesting contrast between the senior chief who we first meet, who wants the agent to cover it all up, to sweep it under the rug. He's like, hey, these guys were, someplace they shouldn't have been doing things they shouldn't be doing. And, it's all against the regulations. It's off the books. They were clearly bad dudes. Let's just kind of like brush this under the rug. We'll tell the Empire that things are okay. But the agent in charge has no time for that. He believes in duty and justice, so he gets more people who think the same way, and they're going to track down Andor. And luckily, Andor's ruffled enough feathers on his own planet that he has alienated people, so enough people that one of them will rat him out in sort of a jealous sort of rage, I suppose, a sort of ratting out based on jealousy. And the green-eyed monster rears its head. Again, I don't necessarily want to go into like any sort of like deep-seated character analysis right now. I'm just trying to set the table for the world that we got here, because again, it's this sort of tone that I think really elevates it to a different place than what we've seen from Star Wars shows. What I also really like, because we get to the chase because we know Andor's done something bad in the first 5 minutes of the first episode. The first 3 episodes do a wonderful job of building the tension in those 3 episodes as Corpo's security kind of tightens the noose around him to when they finally get on planet and they're pursuing him through the town. The town, not fond of corporate security at all, and the way they sort of are passively rebelling, the signaling, the chanting, the engagement to warn one of their own that corporate security is looking for them. All these touches in the show, I think, are really, really well done and well executed, and show sort of a sort of real disparity between the haves and the have-nots in the Star Wars galaxy. I think that's a really important element of the show. As Luthen tells Cassian, this isn't even the fight. This is child's play compared to what I need you for. And we haven't gotten to what their conversation is going to turn into. We've seen snippets of it in the trailers, but I'm really intrigued by the idea of Cassian's world now expanding. Right, like he goes from this world of salvage to manipulating small time scams and dealing with corporate security to now being in the sort of sights of the Empire. Right. He's sort of been beneath their notice before. That's how he's been able to get on board ships and take these vital components that his friend Bix has been able to sell for him. And now he got the attention of Luthen because he's been so good at procuring these parts. Now Luthen wants to bring him on board in a much bigger scale to actually get into the fight in a very real way. It's very, very interesting. And I don't think we've seen all the components that are going to help shape him. I think there's still a lot to get into with his past. I think there's a lot to get into with who he's searching for when he's off planet to begin the episode. Is it really a sister? Or is it some other sort of familial connection, or just another Kenari trying to find another member of his people to maybe connect with in some way? I'm very intrigued by what this all represents and how it all looks in the larger scheme of things. I think it was a really smart decision, to release these 3 episodes, but to have these 3 episodes start with a smaller focus, to kind of stay on these small worlds, this small just taste of the galaxy, so that as the show expands its scope, we're witnessing that through Andor's expanded scope of the way he's going to sort of be immersed in this new, bigger spot view of the galaxy, if you will. Excuse me for my stumble there. We have not seen Mon Mothma yet on the show. That's an element that I think's vital to understanding who Luthen is, and again that bigger scope of the galaxy. We're on a focused, tight. Excuse me. We are we are tightly focused right now on a small section of the galaxy, and we are as episode 3 ends with Luthen and Cassian escaping. That scope is going to widen as Cassian's perspective widens, and I'm really into that idea. I think there's going to be a lot of fun there. One of the elements I wanted to explore a little bit on this conversation with everybody is that, again, this is a very different feeling Star Wars show than many that have come before it thus far. And I think part of that is because, again, that scope is so small and very narrowly focused. But again, we're seeing part of the galaxy that is beneath the Empire's notice at this point. We've just watched 3 episodes of a Star Wars show with no stormtroopers. There's no Imperial presence thus far. We're dealing with this corporate security that's been employed to kind of monitor the things that the Empire's like, whatever. We're, again, going back to what Andor said about like their arrogance and their sort of sense of self-satisfaction. They don't even need to be worried about like these salvage planets. They're not, whatever. As long as they're doing their job and staying in line, that's all that matters. They'll show up if there's some sort of rebellion, but they're going to rely on these corporate security schmucks to take care of things for them. I think that's a very interesting choice to sort of show, again, that arrogance of the Empire, that they will employ these corporate security forces instead. And again, this I think his name was Cyril, the Corsac agent, not Corsac. That's Corellian security. They call them corpos on this, but the corporate security guy who wants to make a much bigger deal out of the death of 2 corrupt agents of his own force. Again, sort of like the sense of grandioseness that he believes again, taking his job just way too seriously, I guess, is the bottom line here. Thinking he is way more important, that his job is way more important than it actually is in the grand scheme of the galaxy. And to see the look on his face at the end of episode 3 when Andor and Luthen have just completely pulled the rug out from underneath him and completely turned the tables on them. And it wasn't just Andor alone or Andor and Luthen by themselves. The entire town, the entire community that Andor exists in on Phoenix is against them. I'm sorry, Ferrix is against them completely. I wanted to mention Fiona Shaw's performance in the show. I love Fiona Shaw. She's one of my favorite performers. And we knew she was going to be in the show. We didn't know the context with it, but her being Andor Marva, Cassian's adoptive mother, I think is a wonderful touch. I love seeing how she and her partner sort of liberate him from Kenari at the beginning of it's just during the course of episode 3. And again, I think there's a lot more to explore with Cassian's origins on Kenari. We talked about it already, a mining accident, but there's more to it than that because Luthen mentions how Andor's father is hung in a very public way on Kenari, and so that needs to be explored. At least that is what I assume he's talking about. That it's going back to his father, his birth father on Kenari. Now, could it be an adoptive father, Marva's partner, perhaps? We'll see. Again, there's a lot more information, a lot more mystery to kind of unravel about Cassian, who he is and where he came from and sort of his origins. But I'm so intrigued by this show. There's so much a mystery to it. It's not surface. There's a lot of depth here. There's a lot of nuance in the story, and we're gonna get to explore these things. We're gonna get to understand where Luthen came from, like what shaped him into this person who's now running sort of espionage against the Empire, who's there saboteuring them, who is there recruiting for an upcoming rebellion. Like what happened? What gave him this purpose? What gave him this cause to be, again, sort of more overt in his actions than we've seen thus far from characters like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, who still do their senatorial duties while sort of trying to figure out other ways to subvert Imperial influence. This guy, Luthen Rael, seems much more interested in an overt strategy, which is why I think why he will draw himself into a relationship with our good friend, played by the great actor Forrest Whitaker. I am, of course, referring to Saw Gerrera. So that's going to be really, really exciting to see those two people come together. And again, always connecting with Saw Gerrera. Saw Gerrera is such an interesting, fascinating figure in this period of Star Wars in particular, that I'm very intrigued to see what they do here, how that relationship forges. And let's see what Saw's been up to in this time. We know he's fighting a guerrilla style warfare against the Empire, but I'm very curious to see how that's progressing. Will we see, perhaps in the shadows, a young Jyn Erso, maybe? Perhaps? Again, we've also speculated that, hey, will we get K2SO's origin in this series at some point? The reprogramming of an Imperial security droid. That'd be a lot of fun, too. Because, again, it's going to start next week. The galaxy's going to expand for Cassian, and we're going to get to see a lot more galaxy trotting adventures as Cassian becomes, I presume, Luthen Rael's top, agent. His, trains him in spycraft and espionage. And again, this is going to be a really exciting show to explore the underbelly of Star Wars and kind of get into the muck. And I'm really intrigued by what we've seen thus far with the show. Another reason why I like that they dropped all 3 of these episodes is because, as I mentioned earlier, the building of the dramatic tension, I think, is really vital to these first 3 episodes because, we're being thrown into a world that's new to us. Everything's new to us in it. It's Star Wars, so there's familiar trappings, but it's very different Star Wars than what we've seen previously. So we're kind of being thrown in at the deep end, and we are getting our answers over or at least not all the answers, but at least enough to start filling in the blanks, start filling in some gaps on who these people are, their relations to each other, how this world sort of works and operates and exists within itself. So getting these 3 episodes all together was delightful. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the way the 3 episodes build the tension is really well executed, really well felt, so that when you're watching all 3, if you watch all 3 back to back to back, again, you really feel it. Like, if it's just you got your fists squeezed, the tension's so tight, and when you get to the action, when you get to the pursuit of the corpos on Rael and Cassian, when you're in that warehouse with those big huge metal casings dropping down from the ceiling and blaster bolts skewing all around, a really great sequence, a lot of fun in that one. And then them moving to the town, the people of Phoenix engaging in their own battle against the corporate people, the corporate security in their own right. Tying the agents' ships, the corpo ship, to scrap, and then eventually crashing that. And the way that the explosion, the decoy ship that explodes and takes out the corpos, so that Luthen and Cassian can make their escape on the speeder bike. It's all so wonderfully executed and performed, and I loved it. The scale of the show is really, really nicely done. Again, it has a very tactile, real feel to it. The show was filmed in London. They were on a lot of sound stages. They were building environments. They did some location shooting as well, which I think comes in really, really handy on a show like this. A lot of people have been very critical on recent Star Wars shows of the volume. This technology that at first wowed so many people, now some people are pushing back against it and saying it's too phony, it's too fake. You can kind of see the limitations of the technology. On this show, the technology is used sparingly, and I think in a very good way. Again, this world feels real so far. There's not been a lot of we'll just say computer effects for lack of a better word to sort of describe the environment in which we are in. It feels like a place that you could go to, even in a galaxy far, far away. It has, I'm going to use the word tactile again. It just has a feel to it that is inescapable, and I love that. I think that makes a Star Wars. I think that is an element of Star Wars that is often overlooked, is sort of the feel of the environments that you're in. So to have that feeling restored in this show, for me, is a real big positive. I really like what they've done with the production design, the production values on the show, and I like the way it's being shot. It's not quite full bore cinematic, but I bet this show would look great on a big screen. I really do. I think it would, and I think that's only going to improve as the show's scope widens. I'm really intrigued to see how this progresses, if there'll be any sort of visual changes as we move from the different directors in the series too, who will cover us in different elements of the story, different progressions. And again, we're not just going to be we are not just going to be in the 5-year period for Cassian. There's a lot of time jumps going on here. We're going to spend time with Cass. I think we're spending more time with Cassian as a kid. We're going to spend more time with him, maybe even earlier in his career. We're going to spend time with Luthen in his past, and trying to figure out what motivated him to be this spy master, for a burgeoning rebellion. And of course, there's the mystery if Cassian was being truthful, that he's looking for his sister. That's obviously a mystery that we have to get to as well. So I'm really intrigued by the show. I'm really encouraged by what I've seen thus far. And I think it's going to be pretty darn epic. We know we're going to 13 episodes of this thing, or 13 more episodes of this thing. It's a ton of Star Wars show. We're going to be busy all the way through November watching this show, and I'm really excited for it. I think the run times thus far are really compelling. They're digestible, but a lot going on. It's dense storytelling. There's a lot of layers there. I've only watched. Listen, I'm going to confess. Normally, I like to watch the show at least twice before I do the recording. My schedule's a tad prohibitive, so I've only watched Andor once, each episode once, before I had to talk about it. But I'm really, really, really looking forward to diving back into those episodes in the coming days, and really sinking my teeth into that world some more, and trying to find more subtle nuance with things. And again, another element that I like about this show that I want to put out there is I think this show is actually really, really approachable for new audience members. I don't think you need to have seen Rogue One to watch this show. I don't think you need to have seen a single Star Wars story, a single Star Wars movie, a single Star Wars book to watch this show. It is insanely approachable. You don't have to know about Jedi and Sith and the prequel era stuff. You don't have to know about Luke and Leia. You don't have to know about any of this stuff. You can sit there and watch this show and become a Star Wars fan. This might be a show that you could sit down somebody who's told you before they're not into Star Wars, and you might be able to change their mind with this show. I think it has a very nice, approachable factor to it. It's not simplistic in any way. Do not misunderstand. But it's just open. You don't have to know about all these other elements of the Star Wars galaxy. You can just sit here and watch the story of Cassian Andor and the burgeoning rebellion. And, I may retract this statement later in the series. Like, maybe they're going to go too far. I'm like, all right, all right. They went too far. I'll admit it. But I think thus far, this is the show that you might be able to get that friend of yours who's pushed back against Star Wars for, 20 years or whatever. And you might be able to sway them. This might be that show. Diego Luna's fantastic in it. I really enjoyed his performance. I always enjoy Stellan Skarsgård. Fiona Shaw's fantastic. Everyone in the show has been good so far. They're interesting. They're compelling. Even when you know they're the bad guys and they're in the wrong, you understand their motivations. It's not just evil for the sake of evil's sake. It's you. Again, you just know where they're coming from. That is really important stuff as far as your storytelling building blocks. You have to understand people's motives for doing the things they're doing and why they're doing those things. Good guy, bad guy, in between. That's just the building blocks. Tony Gilroy gets that. Love it. Love it so much. I don't know what else to say because I don't want to get into scene by scene, specific by specifics of these 3 episodes because there's a lot. There's a lot we could talk about. But going back to that approachable aspect, one other element that I actually enjoyed in this episode is I didn't spend the episode mesmerized by Easter eggs and things I saw in the background. And, having to be like, oh, look, they're referencing blah, blah, blah. I didn't have to do that. I'm just watching Star Wars to watch Star Wars. We're on that Morlano 1 planet, and you're in like this sort of high-end red light district. And it's just an interesting visual style. There's nothing else really going on to pull your eye away. There's no gonk droid in the background. There's no T-16 Skyhopper flying overhead. I sort of enjoyed that element to it. Maybe there'll be more Easter eggs as we get more into like the Imperial side of the story. Maybe as we get into more of Mon Mothma's stuff. But again, I sort of like this more approachable version of Star Wars. It just lends itself to people who aren't already so immersed in the galaxy, if you will. And something about that I found to be really, really refreshing. That I didn't have to take copious amount of notes on all the different things I saw in the background. Again, there's tons of cool looking aliens. You really feel like you're in the Star Wars galaxy because it's full of diverse alien species, and visually they're all interesting. But you're not like, oh, that's the alien that we saw that species in the cantina. No. Like there's a lot of new things going on in this show visually with new species, some familiar species, but it just feels Star Wars. That feel is there, but it's new and exciting. And I think that's really compelling to me. I think that part of it is really compelling to me, that you can just walk in and just sit down and watch the show. And you're not waiting for some deep cut reference to something that happened in the old expanded universe. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the expanded universe, but thus far, at least in these first 3 episodes, you can just walk into the door and watch the show. And I'm here for that. It's a great element. It's a great way to bring new people into Star Wars. And again, that's what Tony Gilroy was talking about in his interview. I believe it was his Rolling Stone interview, about not being so reverential about Star Wars. Is that so? If you have too much reverence for it, you're doing too much fan servicey stuff for it, and that distracts from plot, and that distracts from character and story, and it also distracts from the fact that, hey, maybe you should make a new Star Wars fan with these shows too. It's not just all about luring them in with a Baby Yoda. Don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting Baby Yoda. I love Grogu. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. This is just a different taste of another wonderful, delicious Star Wars ice cream. It's just another flavor, and I like this flavor a lot too. I like the chocolate and peanut butter I get from other Star Wars, but I'm kind of liking this Rocky Road version over here too that I'm getting. And I think Cassian is going to be on a rocky road himself as he starts to learn how to become a agent of the rebellion, a spy, a saboteur, an espionage agent, a conductor of mayhem and anarchy, and sowing the seeds of the Empire's fall. I am here for all of it. And we will be here for it every single week on the Mandovision podcast, because that is what we are now hyper focused on moving forward through Thanksgiving, because that's when the last episode is dropping. Now, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, every single Wednesday for the foreseeable future, we will have these episodes out, hopefully midday, and we'll be able to provide a lot of information and talking points and things, hopefully things for you to think about, like maybe I don't want to speculate. Sorry, I know I made it feel like I was going to drop some big revelation on y'all, but no. I just want to bring things to your attention. Maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. Things for us to talk about later on. That's the element that I want to get into with the show, with the conversation. I hope you're enjoying this show as much as I am. I look forward to talking about this show every single Wednesday with you fine people. I want to give you all another a reminder. Please follow us on social media. We're at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Please be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If you want to give us a sweet 5-star review, that is a great way to help support the show. They really help small independent shows like us stand out, not get lost in the shuffle of the 500 billion Star Wars podcasts that exists. But hey, I know a lot of you listen to all 500 billion of those podcasts, and we thank you for the support. Don't worry about it. If you are interested in keeping the show afloat financially, that is also a possibility too. You can become an official member of Buckethead Nation. You can become a Mandovision Maniac at patreon.com/Mandovision. You can join the Maniacs and gain access to sweet bonus content. And, new bonus show dropped for the Patreons yesterday. It's available now. Go check it out. Thank you to our current Patreons, the Aspen Hill Chody, the Batman Abejo, Jeff Nail. Jeff is the co-host on The Ringing Ear, a great music podcast that I recommend. Check it out. Thanks to Evil Circle, the evilest of all circles, the Squid Master General, Mr. Brian Broussard, the New Jersey Devil, Mark Wegemer, our very own Joker and Harley Quinn, Brian and Krista of Pariah Brewing Company in Baltimore, Maryland, the Beer Hop Brigadier General, Jesus Beer Hops, the Silent Assassin, he who should not be named, and Syndicate Ram, co-host of Come On, It's So Good, and a frequent, a regular contributor to the Mandovision podcast on occasion. Thank you all so much for being supporters of the show. Thank you for checking out our, I can't call it like analysis. I really did not analyze anything in these first 3 episodes, but I hope you enjoyed our discussion about it. I hope I gave you guys some entertaining content, things to think about, and send me what you noticed about the shows. Tell me what you liked about the show that maybe I skipped out on or maybe I missed. So reach out on the socials, and I look forward to seeing and talking to all of you very, very soon. Let's go ahead, wrap up. We'll be back next Wednesday for episode 4 of Andor. This podcast, it can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
I find that answer vague and unconvincing.